Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the mystical land of Eleanor, where light and darkness coexisted in a delicate balance, a young dancer named Emilia was about to embark on a journey that would change the world forever. Eleanor was a land divided not by borders, but by the natural forces of light and dark. The sunlit plains, perpetually bathed in warm, golden light, lay to the east, while the shadowlands, cloaked in eternal night, stretched out to the west. In the heart of this land stood two grand academies, the Academy of Light and the Academy of Darkness, where dancers were trained to harness the power of light and shadow. Emilia was a prodigy of the Academy of Light, her every movement a symphony of grace and power, her control over light unmatched by any of her peers. From a young age, she had dreamed of performing before the High Council, a group of ancient beings who oversaw the balance between light and darkness. This year, her dream was about to come true. The annual Festival of Harmony was approaching, and Emilia had been chosen to represent the Academy of Light in the grand performance. The festival was a time of celebration, where dancers from both academies came together to demonstrate their mastery and to honor the balance that kept their world in harmony. But for Emilia, it was more than just a performance. It was a chance to prove herself, to show that she was worthy of the gifts she had been given. Yet, as the festival approached, a sense of unease began to settle in her heart. Her dreams, once filled with the warmth of the sun, were now haunted by visions of swirling shadows, of a world where light and darkness were not separate, but intertwined. On the day of the festival, the air was thick with anticipation. The streets of the capital city were filled with people, their faces alight with excitement. Banners of gold and silver fluttered in the breeze, and the scent of flowers and spices filled the air. The High Council, with their ancient eyes that had seen centuries of history, took their seats in the grand arena, their expressions unreadable. Emilia stood in the center of the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the arena. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar warmth of the light as it filled her body. She began to dance, her movements fluid and precise, the light bending and twisting around her as if it were an extension of her very being. The audience watched in awe as Emilia moved, her dance a perfect embodiment of the harmony between light and motion. But as she continued, something began to change. The shadows at the edge of the arena seemed to stretch toward her, drawn by an unseen force. Emilia could feel it too, a strange pull that tugged at her, urging her to reach out to the darkness that lay just beyond the light. Without thinking, she extended her hand, and the shadows responded. They flowed toward her, merging with the light in a swirling dance of their own. The crowd gasped as the light and darkness intertwined, creating a breathtaking display of contrast and unity. Emilia's movements became more intense, more powerful, as she embraced this new sensation. She was no longer just a dancer of light, she was something more, something that had never been seen before. The dance reached its climax, and with a final, explosive movement, Emilia released the energy she had gathered. A burst of light and shadow erupted from her, washing over the arena and leaving the audience in stunned silence. Emilia collapsed to the ground, the last of her energy spent. When she opened her eyes, she found herself surrounded by darkness. The sun had set, and the arena was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, but something was wrong. The light and darkness that she had controlled so effortlessly during her performance were now in turmoil within her. She could feel them battling for dominance, each trying to overwhelm the other. Panic set in as she realized she could no longer separate the two forces. They had become one, a chaotic blend of light and shadow that threatened to consume her. Before she could fully comprehend what had happened, Emilia was lifted to her feet by strong hands. She looked up to see the faces of the High Council, their expressions a mix of awe and concern. "What have you done, child?" one of them whispered, his voice filled with a fear that mirrored her own. Amelia tried to speak, but her voice failed her. The council members exchanged glances, their silent conversation filled with unspoken questions. Finally, the leader of the council, a woman with eyes as old as the stars, spoke. "You must come with us, Amelia. There is much we need to discuss." Exhausted and overwhelmed, Amelia could only nod. She was led away from the arena, her mind swirling with confusion and fear. What had she done? And what would become of her now? As the days passed, Amelia's life became a whirlwind of uncertainty. The Academy of Light, once her home and sanctuary, now felt like a prison. She was kept under constant watch, her every move monitored by the council. They questioned her endlessly, trying to understand how she had managed to merge the powers of light and darkness, a feat that had never been achieved before. Amelia herself had no answers. The fusion had been instinctual, a response to the pull she had felt during her dance. But now that the power was within her, she didn't know how to control it. Every attempt to summon the light resulted in a surge of darkness, and vice versa. It was as if the two forces were inextricably linked, bound together in a way that defied the natural order of their world. The council was divided. Some believed that Amelia was a danger, a threat to the balance that had kept their world in harmony for centuries. Others saw her as a potential savior, the one who could finally unite light and darkness and bring true peace to Eleanor. But no one could agree on what should be done. As the debate raged on, Amelia grew more and more isolated. Her friends at the academy, once so supportive and kind, now kept their distance, their eyes filled with suspicion and fear. She could feel the darkness within her growing stronger, feeding off her despair and loneliness. The light, once her greatest ally, now felt like a distant memory, slipping further and further out of her reach. In her darkest moments, Amelia would retreat to the edge of the academy grounds, where the sunlit plains met the shadowlands. Here, the light and darkness mingled in a delicate dance, neither one fully dominating the other. It was a place of perfect balance, and it was here that Amelia felt a glimmer of hope. It was during one of these solitary visits that she first encountered the Grey Dancer. The figure appeared from the shadows, their movements so fluid and graceful that Amelia couldn't tell where the darkness ended and the dancer began. The Grey Dancer was a legend, a being said to have mastered both light and darkness, but no one at the academy had ever seen them before. "Who are you?" Amelia asked, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and fear. The Grey Dancer didn't answer right away. Instead, they circled around her, their eyes studying her intently. "You are not like the others," they finally said, their voice soft and enigmatic. "You have touched the void, felt the pull of both light and shadow. But you are still unbalanced, still unsure of your place in the dance." Amelia felt a surge of anger at the words. "I didn't ask for this," she snapped. "I was happy with the light. I never wanted to be this." The Grey Dancer stopped, their expression unreadable. "The dance does not care what you want, child. It simply is. You are part of it now, whether you like it or not. The question is, what will you do with this power?" Amelia didn't have an answer. All she knew was that she was tired of feeling lost, of being torn between two worlds. "I don't know how to control it," she admitted. "Every time I try, it overwhelms me." The Grey Dancer nodded, as if they had expected this. "You cannot control the dance by force, Amelia. You must become one with it. Embrace both light and shadow, not as enemies, but as parts of a whole. Only then will you find balance. It sounded so simple, but Emilia knew it wouldn't be. The thought of embracing the darkness, of allowing it to flow through her as freely as the light, terrified her. But she also knew that she couldn't continue as she was. The power within her was growing, and if she didn't learn to control it, it would consume her. "Will you help me?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. The gray dancer smiled, a rare expression that softened their otherwise stern features. "I will guide you, but the dance is yours to master. Are you ready?" Emilia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision. She knew that this path would be difficult, filled with challenges and dangers she couldn't yet imagine. But it was the only way forward. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady and determined. And so began Emilia's training with the gray dancer. It was unlike anything she had experienced at the Academy of Light. There were no structured lessons, no routines to follow. Instead, the gray dancer led her through a series of exercises designed to challenge her understanding of light and darkness. They would dance together in the twilight, where the two forces met and mingled. Emilia was taught to feel the rhythm of the world around her, to listen to the whispers of the shadows and the songs of the light. At first, it was overwhelming. The darkness was cold and foreign, and every time she let it in, she felt as if she were losing a part of herself, but the gray dancer was patient, guiding her through each step, helping her to find the balance she so desperately needed. Slowly, Emilia began to understand. The darkness wasn't something to be feared, it was simply another form of energy, just like the light. It could be just as beautiful, just as powerful, if she allowed herself to see it that way. As the days turned into weeks, Emilia's control over her powers grew. She could summon light and darkness with equal ease, blending them together in a dance that was uniquely her own. The gray dancer watched her progress with pride, though they never offered praise. Instead, they pushed her harder, testing her limits, forcing her to confront the deepest parts of herself. One day, after a particularly grueling session, the gray dancer sat beside Emilia as she caught her breath. "You're improving," they said, their tone as neutral as ever. "But you're still holding back." Emilia frowned, wiping the sweat from her brow. "I don't understand." "I'm doing everything you've taught me." The gray dancer shook their head. "You're doing well, but you're still afraid. There's a part of you that hasn't fully accepted what you are. Until you do, you will never reach your full potential." Emilia knew they were right. No matter how much she tried to embrace the darkness, there was still a part of her that resisted, that longed for the simplicity of light. "How do I let go of that fear?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. The gray dancer's gaze softened. "You must confront it, head on. There is a place, deep within the Shadowlands, where the darkness is pure, unfiltered. It is said that those who enter and survive come out changed, their fears left behind. But it is dangerous, and not all who enter return." Emilia felt a shiver run down her spine. The idea of willingly walking into such a place was terrifying, but she knew that this was the final step in her journey. If she wanted to truly master her powers, she had to face the darkness within herself. "I'll go," she said, her voice firm despite the fear that gnawed at her. The gray dancer nodded, their expression unreadable. "Very well. But remember, Emilia, the darkness is not your enemy. It is a part of you, just as the light is. If you can remember that, you will find your way." The journey to the heart of the Shadowlands was long and arduous. The further Emilia traveled from the sunlit plains, the more the light faded, replaced by a thick, impenetrable darkness. The air grew colder, the landscape more barren, until she finally reached the entrance to the place the gray dancer had described. It was a vast cavern, its entrance yawning like the mouth of a great beast. Inside, there was no light, not even the faintest glimmer. Emilia stood at the threshold, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the darkness inside, waiting, beckoning her to enter. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. The darkness swallowed her whole, enveloping her in a cold, suffocating embrace. Emilia's first instinct was to summon the light, to push back against the encroaching shadows, but she stopped herself. This was not a battle she could win with force. She had to accept the darkness, to let it in. She closed her eyes and let go of her fear, allowing the darkness to wash over her. It was terrifying, like falling into a bottomless pit, but she resisted the urge to fight it. Instead, she focused on her breath, on the steady rhythm of her heart, grounding herself in the moment. As she did, something began to change. The darkness, once so cold and menacing, started to feel different. It was still powerful, still overwhelming, but it no longer felt like an enemy. It was simply there, a part of the world, just as the light was. Emilia could feel it pulsing around her, a living, breathing force that she had never truly understood. And then, as if in response to her acceptance, the darkness began to recede. A soft glow appeared in the distance, growing brighter as she walked toward it. When she reached the source, she found herself standing in a small, dimly lit chamber. In the center of the room was a pool of water, its surface shimmering with an ethereal light. Emilia knelt beside the pool, gazing into its depths. The water was clear, reflecting her image back at her, but there was something different about it. She could see herself, but she was surrounded by both light and darkness, the two forces intertwined in perfect harmony. It was then that Emilia understood. The darkness was not something to be feared, nor was it something to be controlled. It was a part of her, just as the light was. Together, they made her whole, complete. With this realization, Emilia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The fear that had plagued her for so long was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and understanding. She rose to her feet, her mind clear and focused. She was ready. When Emilia returned to the gray dancer, they could see the change in her immediately. "You found your balance," they said, a note of approval in their voice. Emilia nodded. "I have. Thank you." The gray dancer smiled, a rare expression that conveyed more than words ever could. "The final test awaits you, Emilia. The balance you have achieved is strong, but it will be tested. The factions are gathering, each one believing that they can control you, that they can use your power for their own ends. You must show them that you belong to neither side." Emilia took a deep breath, feeling the light and darkness within her pulse in unison. She was no longer afraid. She knew who she was, and what she needed to do. "I'm ready," she said. The final confrontation took place at the ancient Temple of Equinox, a sacred site where light and darkness were said to converge. The temple was a place of great power, its walls carved with intricate symbols that told the story of the world's creation. It was here that the High Council had called for a meeting, a last-ditch effort to prevent the impending war between the two factions. But the tension was palpable. The leaders of the Academy of Light and the Academy of Darkness stood on opposite sides of the temple, their faces grim and determined. Both believed that Emilia was the key to their victory, that her power could tip the balance in their favor. Emilia stood in the center of the temple, her heart steady, her mind clear. She could feel the eyes of both factions on her, waiting to see what she would do. But she was not here to choose sides. She was here to bring balance. With a deep breath, Emilia began to dance. The light responded to her movements, flowing around her like a river of gold. But this time, she did not stop there. She reached out to the darkness, inviting it to join her dance. The shadows rose up, intertwining with the light in a breathtaking display of unity. The leaders of the factions watched in awe, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Emilia's dance was unlike anything they had ever witnessed, a perfect blend of light and darkness, of power and grace. It was a dance of balance, of harmony, and it was clear that she was in complete control. As the dance reached its climax, Emilia felt the power within her surge. She released it in a wave of energy that washed over the temple, filling every corner with a radiant light that carried the essence of both forces. The leaders of the factions were thrown back, their arguments silenced, their anger quelled. When the light faded, the temple was still. Emilia stood at the center, her chest rising and falling with each breath, her mind at peace. The balance had been restored, not through force or domination, but through understanding and acceptance. The High Council, who had witnessed the entire event, approached her. Their expressions were filled with reverence and respect. "You have done what no one else could," Emilia, the leader of the council, said. "You have shown us the true path, the way to harmony. We are in your debt." Emilia shook her head. "I did what needed to be done. The balance is what matters, not me." The council members exchanged glances, their eyes filled with a newfound hope. "You are wise beyond your years, Emilia. The world needs more like you." With the conflict resolved, the two academies began to work together, teaching future generations of dancers the importance of balance. The rivalry that had once defined them was replaced by a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. Emilia, however, chose a different path. She had no desire to be a hero or a leader. She had found her peace, her balance, and that was enough. She continued to train under the guidance of the Grey Dancer, exploring the depths of her powers, always seeking to deepen her understanding of the dance of light and darkness. Years passed, and the legend of Emilia, the dancer of light and darkness, spread throughout Eleanor. She became a symbol of unity, a reminder that true power comes not from domination, but from balance. And as the world changed, so did the dancers, embracing the lessons she had taught them. In the end, Emilia's journey was not one of glory or fame, but of self-discovery and acceptance. She had found her place in the dance, and in doing so, had helped to bring peace to a world on the brink of chaos. Her story, like the dance itself, was one of balance, of light and darkness intertwined in perfect harmony.